Hello, everybody. My name's James. Welcome to another Planet FPL Clash of the Correspondents. And it's not all about the doublers in double game week 33. Firstly, let me introduce you to our West Ham United correspondent. It's Chris Stone. How are you, Chris?
Yeah, all good, James. How are you?
I'm good, thank you, mate. And our Southampton correspondent, Matt Samuels here. How are you, Matt?
As good as I was the last time, mate.
We'll get there. I'm going to do this one a bit differently. Let's start with the FPL chat, actually. There will be a bit of interest in your assets this week, Chris. Have you got any West Ham at the moment?
I've only got Areola at the moment.
Bench boost this week or not?
Yeah, I've got bench boost this week. I was having an eye in last week or this week. It was a case of it didn't really matter about the doublers because I haven't got more than 11, so it didn't make a lot of difference either week. So, and obviously last week there was only the one game, but one double. So yeah, I've got the bench boost this week.
Any more
So
West Ham going in or not?
no, I don't think so. No. I think I've only made one transfer. I took out Palmer for Saka and captain Saka, so he's been my only transfer this week. It means I roll one over because I'm conscious that obviously the week after is the is the blank for a few teams, and I haven't got a free hit left.
So have you made that transfer this week or was it last week
No,
prior
no,
to?
I did it this week knowing that Saka isn't going to be playing.
Before tonight.
Well, yeah, this
I
is the bit where I go, sorry, guys, we are pre-recording
Yeah.
on Wednesday afternoon prior to Arsenal's game in Madrid, and this may all look, Chris, you might be a meme very shortly.
I'm probably an idiot, but let's see. We shall see. I committed the cardinal sin. I know.
I'm sure you'll probably be fine, mate. Matt, any West Ham on board?
No, no, not at the moment.
Any intention?
Unlikely. I'll probably target some more doublers, to be honest.
Good man. Is it a case of that, Matt? That are we right to still be considering West Ham
I
players
mean,
going into this?
I wouldn't put anybody off, say, bringing in like Jarrod Bowen or Kudus, for instance. I do think we might end up getting the one goal that we tend to always score. So yeah, that could potentially wipe out a few clean sheets on the bench. But yeah, in terms of those attacking players, I definitely wouldn't put anybody off.
So for you, you'd still fancy yourselves to go there and score because I think there's a few will be looking at defensive players, and actually someone like Aaron Wan-Bissaka, Chris, will hold quite well till the end of the season now, isn't it? I've said I've got you top of my ticker from now till the end of the season.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at a few of the games, um, they're they're not they're not a bad shout defensively. Ironically, we've only had two clean sheets, but we're not letting in the volume of goals. So it's just it's one of those, isn't it? It's not they're not going to be maybe your starters, but they're a good they're fairly cheap. And if you've got issues with injuries or you just want to free out some funds, they're not a bad shout. I mean, Wan-Bissaka would probably be the first choice out of the defence because
Is
he's
that
of his attacking potential.
is that clean sheets all season?
No, I think we've had three. I was just looking at it
Oh
because I was
wow,
looking.
that's better.
I know, but I mean,
Matt's
um,
like, what's a clean
Yeah,
sheet?
ironically, we've only so we haven't conceded more than two goals in any of the games under Potter. Um,
Hmm,
so
good
we've
stat.
tightened up, but we've not. I don't think we've had I don't think we've had maybe as many of the results as we would have liked. And a few more clean sheets and a few more wins, it'd all look very different. So I don't think it's that far off, but certainly we've improved defensively. Even though that's not that's a low bar to start off with.
If people do want a defender from now and just to hold through to the end of the season, bearing in mind the majority have used their wild card, is Wan-Bissaka definitely the right West Ham player to get, or is Kilman or one of the centre backs an alternative worth of consideration instead?
I mean, I probably Wan-Bissaka's good because he seems to be playing most of the games, and even when um, he doesn't, he can be switched over to left back, which isn't always great. Um, but he is good. He does get forward quite a lot. He gets forward a lot more than he did, and he seems he's got better about it. He's having a few shots here and there as well now, so he will play most of the games, if not all of them. Kilman's probably the other one who would start. The other Tobido and Mavropanos, they blow hot and cold. Um, Tobido's my personal choice, who I prefer to be playing there. But he's had a few injuries, and Mavropanos seems to cover, so they kind of cancel each other out, and they're not probably the most inspiring of choices. So Kilman, for the fact that he plays most of the games and he is a threat, Mavropanos, ironically, is a decent threat at set plays, but he's not the great. He's not our greatest defender, and I don't think he'll be there next season.
Kilman seems to be the only one at centre back that's consistently always playing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He is. He's solid. You know, he's dependable, and he's seemed probably cursed it now, but he seems to have been relatively injury free.
Okay. Definitely Bowen for you over Kudos for those who do want to invest.
Yeah, just for the consistency factor. Kudos is improving. He seems to have been in the last sort of few games. I mean, he hit the bar against Liverpool, but he's always got that risk of getting hooked, or he might not be on it that day. Or where Bowen, he's going to play week in, week out, 90 minutes every single game.
For those who can't get to Bowen, if they do want to invest there, say, I don't know, maybe you've got a Clivert and he's ruled out again at the weekend and you can only get to Kudus. What would you say to people who's asking you for that?
It's one of those high risk, high reward ones. It could pay off. He could if he goes off, but he just needs if he scores one. I've said it before. If he goes a week and he scores, he's probably going to be in or around the goals the week after. He's one of those sort of players that goes on a run.
Okay. So we need to see form before we invest. So essentially probably a no then.
I mean, if you're doing it for Southampton, then you take that risk, don't you? Because you're playing a team that potentially who you could score against more. But otherwise, yeah, if you were doing it the week after, I'd like to see something. I mean, he's getting there, but he hasn't got the results to show for it.
Yeah, it feels very straightforward if you are investing in West Ham assets this week. Definitely Bowen if you want an offensive one. Definitely Wan-Bissaka, I think, if you're going for a defender. And if you do need some goalkeeper coverage, maybe sit there with Edison. Don't want to go Ortega because it might be how many games you're going to play. Then Areola. By the way, I don't know if Edison's out at this time recording. I just know that he's always a shit fantasy asset. Matt, should we talk Southampton FPL assets?
If we have to.
Right, I'm going to struggle here. First question. Any chance of Ross Stewart starting?
No, I can't see it. I think he's probably only got 30, maybe 45 in his legs at the moment. The club are being so careful with him that if Onuachu was out at the weekend, I can see it being Archer again. And then if that's the case, I'll revise what I said that West Ham will score, because I don't think we will. We look completely toothless with Archer through the middle.
He went off against us, Matt. And when he went off, I had to remind myself, fuck, Cameron Archer's playing.
Yeah.
That's against my team.
Yep.
He's just completely anonymous.
Yeah, he's so anonymous when he's playing through the middle. He's okay off the left, but even then, I've been so unimpressed with him this season.
The reason I ask about Stewart is obviously for a group of people who may be on free hit this week, and I think a number of people will go with 5 in midfield. And if they're tight for money, trying to force in, I don't know, Salah, Saka, KDB, etc., maybe even Bowen as well, then having Stewart as an enabling coverage on the bench as a third forward might be what people want to look at. That's why I ask about his minutes.
Yeah, he'll get minutes. I think he'll at least come on for the last half hour. That's what he's done the last 2 games.
What's the situation with Tyler Diblin? Should be more interesting at 4.4, but it feels staggering to look back on the things we said in sort of like August, that he's only got 60 FPL points.
He just, obviously with the change of manager to Jurich, which we'll come on to, and then coming back, and I think we're inevitably going to play probably 3 at the back, 5 at the back with Rusk until the end of the season. It's a real struggle to get Dibbling into that formation, particularly if Onuachu's playing, because if he's playing, you likely have, say, Archer potentially or in Sulemana. If not, it will just be Onuachu, Sulemana with, say, Matty Fernandez behind. So it's a real struggle to get him into the game, and that's why we've probably seen him only really appear for the last 20 minutes, half an hour of the second halves recently.
Okay. So definite no go at the moment if you want to enable in midfield.
Yeah, I wouldn't touch him because I honestly can't guarantee him starting at the weekend.
Okay. I'm not going to pain you by asking you about 3.9 defenders and stuff. That's I just assume is an avoid, and there must be options from other clubs in seriousness. Absolutely. I bet you didn't think though that you'd have the highest scoring player in double game with 32, did you?
Nope.
I mean, he has to make some saves, isn't he? So there's worse things you can do than have Aaron Ramsdale, isn't there?
Oh yeah. I think he's done well for himself. I mean, the reason we're conceding goals isn't his fault; it's the guys in front of him.
Yeah, I get that. And you think back 3 will stick now under Simon Rusk, yeah?
Yeah,
Is that
100%.
what he is, or do you just think it's just a consequence
Yeah,
of continuation?
I think he when he came in for that Fulham game between Russell and Juric, Juric was obviously in the stands. It was the back three, and it was very much about don't concede, try and get a point. And we did very similar against Villa at the weekend just gone. I mean, they didn't really have a sniff for the 60 minutes. Our issue is we don't have a bench. So as soon as we start making substitutions, it was all over the place. And then that's when we start to concede the chances. So I think his game plan was fine. You know, we could have well walked out with a point if we could have kept everybody for 90 minutes. But yeah, when we start making changes, that's when we leak.
Is there any chance he'd be the permanent manager next
No,
season?
no, I think he's already come out and said that he doesn't particularly want it. I think he
Right.
enjoys his role with the 21s. But I think from memory, we seem to have secured someone else for the under 21. So it might be a case that he may even move on in the summer, or depending on who we bring in, they might see him as part of the first team staffing instead.
Okay. Urich, how do you? In fact, let's take a step back. We did a podcast with Bradley Parker where you and Wolves have both lost your managers after you lost 5-0 to my team in December. You were in no doubt at that point that it was right for Russell Martin to go. Moving forward 4 months, do you feel any different about that now?
No, I think the issue was the toxicity, and I mean Martin's done a few interviews since, and he does speak well. Um, and we could well have stuck with him. I think would still be in the same situation. The issue with them bringing in Juric, I mean, his first game was against West Ham, which obviously we lost 1-0 at home, but we
Bit
absolutely
unlucky, am I right in saying that
yeah,
day?
we dominated for the first
Yeah.
45, 60 minutes. Onuachu missed three absolute sitters, and they couldn't handle him. But it then came to a point where after that he started tinkering and doing this man-to-man press, and the players have obviously gone from one style to another. He then almost overcomplicated it, and there were so many gaps in the midfield. So I think had we maybe stuck with just that back three, you know, Walker Peters, for instance, was bombing forward, pinging in balls, it might have been better. But he almost tried to implement his style so quickly that the players just didn't understand it.
Is that down to them not being good enough?
Yeah,
So, I mean, would you have been, did Juric have to go after the relegation was confirmed? I mean, I'm kind of looking at why didn't just see out the season, or is it a case of he's not going to be the man for next season? Just move it on, just call it
yeah,
quits.
yeah. I think that was it. Was either now after your game or at the end of the season. So I think they've just done the right thing and said, look, right, we've got Rusk. We'll bring in Lallana, obviously, as assistant manager now. So we'll just let that be. And it means that the fans don't really have a reason to get on the back of the manager, etc. Now, which that was a big thing for Juric. It's more just right. The onus is on the players. They're the ones that have screwed up this season. We'll
So was
reset.
he getting a lot of
Yeah.
pressure from the fan base as well, Juric, as in people wanting him gone?
Yeah, before the Spurs game, I can't remember who we played at home, but that's the first time you then heard the Northern say like you don't know what you're doing. When we brought Stevens on, for instance, in the last 5 minutes as a striker, so yeah, when it gets to that stage, it's a case of like, yes, it's done.
Okay. Danny Rose, Chef Wednesday is the name that seems to constantly being mentioned.
Yep.
And they've got their own issues as protests going on with the owners there at the moment at Hillsborough. Is that who we think is going to be in charge next season?
I think so. It's no secret that we approached them in January for him. We just, I think they outright flattened and said no. We wouldn't pay the compensation. Um, Also, the relationship. So we've just appointed a new kind of group technical director, Johannes Spors. So he's effectively coming in, and I think he's going to be very much part of the transfer planning strategy and almost restarting the strategy across the group. But he was with Danny Roll at Leipzig, so he also knows him as a relationship. So I think that could also be a benefit.
Okay. Chris, how you feeling about Graham Potter? It kind of feels like you're in this kind of weird kind of pre-season mode already. It feels like how you've
Yeah,
been just sort of preparing for next season with no threat of challenging for Europe and no threat of getting relegated. Is that how it's felt as a fan as well?
yeah. I mean, it's been like the longest sort of end of the season almost. So it's a bizarre kind of situation, wasn't it? Because he was when he came in, it was almost positioned as that. So almost from the start when he took over in January, it was we're building for next season. So you're kind of writing off this season, and that this the game. the games are never nothing, but yeah, it's just seems a long period of that really
And
of not much.
And how do you feel about him? Because I feel like I'm getting mixed signals from a few. It's understandable split opinions from West Ham fans at the moment. Clearly, he's making you tougher to beat. I think you see that at Liverpool last week, and I think at the game
Yeah,
at Stamford Bridge as well. Definitely tougher to beat in terms of losing them games 2-1, where you may have got slapped previously. I mean, what did you lose those two fixtures at home? 3-0 and 5-0, was it? Or 6-0
yeah.
against Liverpool? What was it?
There was
5-0?
I think it was five. I think that one. I mean, there was a few games. You know, we lost 4 or 5.
Yeah.
Three wasn't letting in 3 goals wasn't uncommon.
So I think there's an acceptance that the results haven't been too important, but I also get the sense from many West Ham fans they feel like they would have liked to have seen more than what they have so far.
Yeah, I think it's a really tricky one. I mean, like obviously Moyes has gone to Everton and he's done quite well, but I still think it was the right
I
the
agree.
right time for him to go. Lopetegui came in. We we ended up obviously at the end of Moyes' tenure, he was leaking a lot of goals, and I think part of that was probably where he's been there a long time. Maybe that's an appeasement to try and win over more of the fan base, to try and be more attacking. Wasn't him. Lopetegui came in. The defensive side didn't get any better. We weren't even scoring. We were scoring, no better, but we were conceding just as bad as we were on the tail end of Moyes' career. So I think from Potter's perspective, he's come in and he stabilised things. I don't. I think if you'd had a few more results, people's opinions might be a bit more. I don't know, a bit more optimistic about next season and about this season. I mean, at the end of the day, we're 17th. We're one place above the relegation zone. We're not really going to realistically, unless Ipswich or Leicester suddenly have a complete epiphany and suddenly, which can happen, but they've got
Don't
to make
think
up a
so,
lot of ground.
Chris.
Not at
No,
all.
I mean exactly, but it's not going to happen. So, but you want to be a little bit higher up the league. So I don't think the results of maybe we've got a few results we haven't done, but like you said, we are more resilient. We're in the games. I don't think there's a lot of excitement there necessarily, but I think there's a stable platform to build on. And I think after the last sort of year or so, the last half of Moyes' season and the first half of Lopetegui's, I think that's better than where we were, and I think that's you've got to hope that next season is better in the terms of maybe some of the personnel. There'll be a few changes, I think, in players in and out. I don't think it won't be as as fast as what Lopetegui's was, where we're bringing in 8 or 9 players. I don't think that'd be the right thing to do. I think it'd be more gradual. But I think the thing that I like about Potter is that it might not be exciting, but there is a process. He does have a system. And it's effective in the sense of he stopped the rot. Now what he's got to do, he's got to try and build up the attacking side of it. But you've got to have that foundation to build with. And there was a period where he had some quite bad injuries to our attacking. We had no attacking players for sort of 5 or 6 games. So if you take those out of it, then 2 or 3 results by the end of the season, it might look a little bit different. Not fantastic. It's not, you can't dress it up, but it could look a bit better. If we're sitting 14th, for example, then that would look a bit better. I mean,
Well,
ironically,
with that in mind, I mean, does it matter if you finish 17th?
um, technically no, but I just think it's it's just that you're going into the next season on a from the fans' perspective, it'll be on a bit of a downer, and that'll be we finished 17th last year, so automatically there'll be, their expectations will be that we're in the relegation zone. We've got to do better, and all the questions around Potter and all that sort of stuff. So he's starting on a hard. It will give him a bit of breathing room with elements of the fans. I think if we're in a slightly higher
I
position.
don't think you will, by the way. I think you will. Your fixtures are good, right? Southampton,
Yeah,
home, Brighton away. Tottenham and Manchester United may have European distractions, possibly around
yeah,
about the time you play them. More likely United than my team. Forest might also have nothing to play for by that point. It might even have top 5 wrapped up. Who knows? And then you go to Ipswich. Final day of the season. It's good fun of fixtures. As I said, I've got you top with my ticker for the last 6.
yeah. It's not bad. I mean, we're a bit unpredictable. I mean, like I say, we're not going to get spanked. I would hope, not based on what we've seen so far. It's just if we can get a few goals. But if, like you say, Tottenham are still in Europe, United are still in Europe.
I mean, you
Had
beat
that
my team
district.
either way anyway, so I don't even know why I said that.
I mean, it's you've got to have something to look forward to. But I guess if at the end of the season we
Well,
finished
there's
above,
something, Chris, I can assure you.
but I mean that will help. That will certainly
Well,
help if we
actually, no,
beat
being
Spurs.
serious, if West Ham did beat Tottenham, even though it's kind of an irrelevant football match,
Yeah.
that would help it massively, wouldn't it, with the fans
Yes.
beating
Yeah.
Tottenham?
Yeah. That would be huge. I mean, if we let's say for example at the end of the season we finished above Tottenham and Man United, they've had a terrible season by their standards, but on paper it gives fans something to, you know, at least in that banter with other, the Tottenham and United fans that all live in London anyway.
But
they
you
can,
probably will, mate, by the way.
but they've got something they can say at the moment. It's you're 17th, you're rubbish and that kind of thing. And there's not really much to shout about, is there really at the moment? But yeah, we'll see.
Yeah. Listen, the best my club can finish, and it's probably the same for you, Chris, is probably 13th. And 13th, 17th. I mean, it's all shit, isn't it? Like,
Yeah, yeah,
this
it's
is
not what you would have
it's
wanted at the start of the
it's
season.
it's not 18th. That's probably the good news out of it.
Yeah.
Matt, how does this change at the bottom for the promoted teams?
It's getting
What's the
tougher.
solution? I mean, you and Leicester have come up, with all due respect, been miles off, really. And yet you were both very established Premier League clubs for a consistent period. It's not like you two haven't yo-yoed.
No.
How did we change this? Because the gap's so big.
Yeah, it's tough. I think I think we almost came up a season too early, which is also one of the big issues because you kind of go down and you lose a load of players. You know, we made a load of money, but then you're almost kind of reinvesting to try and get promoted in the championship, but you can't attract the players that would be probably of the quality you need in the Premier League. So that's where our difficulty's been in. And you kind of, the likes of Dibbling was starting to emerge, bringing someone like Harwood, Bellis, Flynn Downs. Yes, they're good. They're good players, but they only really had that season to kind of gel. Then they get promoted, and obviously we know the gap is huge. So I think the difficulty is trying to build a squad in the championship that yes will get you promoted, spend a bit of money without the risk of not getting promoted, and then you're screwed. Um, but then have enough to at least try and get you to January before you can maybe bring in some more experienced players if you need to in that first season back in the Prem. But it's just becoming more and more difficult. You look at the likes of Wolves. You know, I wasn't particularly impressed myself when we went to Wolves, but they still managed to beat us. You look at the gap between them and us is huge. Even then, when say Everton, West Ham, it's just too big. That's the biggest problem, and I think we're genuinely going to have this for a few seasons, even if it's what Leeds, Burnley, potentially Sheffield United. Leeds maybe, but I just can't see the three of them staying up next season.
You obviously came up playing a very kind of ball possession orientated style without, with due respect, players who were inferior to the majority of teams you were playing against. In hindsight, this is mad. Would the best thing have been to have sacked Martin after promotion and appointed someone who was free at the time, who's got experience in the league, like a David Moyes, and thrown money at it and just gone, right, do you know what? We just got to do whatever we got to do to give us the best chance of staying up. And then we go back to this football once we've stabilised.
Um, no, I don't think so. I think Martin touched on it perfectly. I think in one of his interviews that they were almost surprised at how intense the Premier League is and how good the opposition are. So, we've got Ugacic obviously on loan and Downs, but when one's injured, we effectively have to have like Joe Aribo or Smallbone in that midfield, and they struggle massively against most teams. That they're not an eight, they're not really a holding or pressing midfielder. So I think we overlooked that a little bit in the summer.
That's
And
almost like my point a little bit, just to jump in, because David Moyes wouldn't have,
no,
because he knows the league, right?
yeah, yeah, no, I do get it. I can see why. It's a bit. It would have been a huge shock had we said, "All right, thanks, Martin. We'll move on." But I do think potentially the likes of Martin and even Danny Roll, if he comes in, they're all new to the Premier League. They are going to have to maybe start to realize that the gap is bigger than what they expect it to be, and maybe review Premier League games a lot more than say they have been.
So remove yourself from it. We'll just use a different club example here, and they'll probably come up Burnley
Yep.
with Scott Parker. And we discussed last summer, Scott Parker is clearly known how to get clubs out of the Championship. Fulham, Bournemouth, probably Burnley about to join as well. What would your reaction be if in the summer Burnley sacked him?
I'd be shocked because it's almost a reset from what they know. You effectively, in my opinion, I think our club should maybe come up and recruit to strengthen what they've kind of built in that championship season, rather than saying, "All right, thank you, you got us up, but we'll move on." And it almost leaves a bad taste if you kind of sack a manager that's promoted. But I do get the devil's, advocate
Yeah.
that you're playing here. That
So
yeah,
the follow-up question is, do you think Burnley will stay up with Scott Parker next year?
no,
Right. So that's the point, isn't it?
but I don't
Something for
think Burnley will.
someone somewhere has got to
Yeah,
change here, isn't it?
I don't think Burnley will stay up without spending an absolute fortune.
Yeah, this is going to get harder and harder, unfortunately. And I think, like I said, with clubs like yourselves and Leicester who have been established, that's probably been, I think with Burnley, Sheffield United, Luton last year, it was a recognition that was two clubs. Burnley, Sheffield United had a weaker team, and Luton, their story was a miracle. This year, I think there was real hope with all three teams. And Ipswich feel like I discussed this with Paul in the last COTC. Ipswich were excused, the kind of
Yeah,
back-to-back promotions, and they did try and spend. With Sales and Leicester, I don't think any of us thought that it would end up this
nope.
bad, unfortunately. And of course, Matt, it could unfortunately be bad. How important is this additional point?
No, it's almost laughable. And I mean, I tweeted about it. I think it was last week. But our list of obviously records in the Premier League, we've got the two 9-0s. Yes, we've got the positives, the quickest hat trick and the quickest goal. But we've now added to that. So Villa are the first, well, we're the first team to concede 3 goals in the Premier League to 3 subs. So that's another one to go on our list. Um, so
Really
we might,
clutching now. How
yeah.
many can we
So
have?
exactly. So we might as well. But I
Tottenham
think
got your manager sacked twice. I don't suppose
yes,
that's happened
yeah,
often.
no, but yeah, I think it's important for the club themselves and for those players that are going to get relegated to overcome this because they don't need that on their CV at the end of the day. It would be nice if Derby could keep it, but I just don't know where we're getting the points from. That Leicester away game is huge, but no doubt they'll turn up on the day.
Could you get signed this weekend?
I can't see it. If Paul Onuachu starts, then yes. But as soon as he goes off, we're null and void going forward. And if we can keep our starting 11 on the pitch for as long as possible, then yes, maybe. If the team that started against Villa, for instance, starts against West Ham, I think we've got a chance. We proved that, we can give West Ham a good game at home. But yeah, as soon as we start making changes, that's when the panic sets in. So I personally can't see us getting a point, which would be great, but you never know.
It feels like it's probably got to be within the next three. If you look at the last three, you finish with City and Arsenal at home.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the Everton away game is complicated furthermore by the fact it being the last game at Goodison Park.
Yep.
And that's obviously going to be one hell of an atmosphere. Your only hope is that Everton turn up drunk, I suppose, which is the possibility, maybe. But it's difficult to foresee you getting anything out of that.
Absolutely.
How important is it? Like, how much does it matter? Is this a big deal or
Yeah, well,
not?
I think it's a big deal for the club, and I think it's a big deal for us fans because as much as we joke about it, we already get beaten by the stick, for the 9-0s, and we really don't want this because that if we were to have a 10-point season, I genuinely can't see that being beaten for a long, long time. Like the Derby record was already low, so for someone to be on 10, I just I really hope we don't because it's just one of those things. It will stick with you for a lifetime.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it's a bit different. We've discussed, 17th, 13th is where it's like whatever. This is, if you finish on 14 points, it's still shit, isn't it?
Yeah, but
But
nobody remembers.
it's not exactly. I don't think anyone can quite remember like what Villa finished on when they got relegated. It was like
No,
horrendous. But yeah, I mean, I've said this a few times, Matt. You are better than that Derby team.
yep,
I've no doubt about that. But it's almost therefore even more unforgivable for you not to get to the 11-point barrier.
agreed. And I also don't want Robbie Savage to have that record taken away from his career. So
That's a
Amen
good
to
enough reason.
yeah, amen to that. Have you considered, Matt, goal difference? Could
No,
could this be a thing? All I mean by this is there's a scenario here. You lose at West Ham, you lose to Fulham, you draw at Leicester, and then you've equaled the 11 points. Does it then become worse goal difference? Is the worst ever team?
I think people will just look at the points record and it'd be a joint shit.
Well, you're
So
on minus 54, Derby were minus 69.
yeah, we could get there given we've got City and Arsenal.
Yeah, but probably what I'm getting at is, do you play them games going into them thinking take 1-0, 2-0 yeah?
Oh yeah,
If you're under that then scenario where you've
quite
got 1 point in the next three.
quite possibly. Yeah, yeah, we could well do. And the club may go, well, actually, we conceded or we had a better goal difference to Derby. But yeah, in terms of the points, I think that's all that really matters. Ideally, get to the 12 and then nobody particularly cares.
Yeah, shite, mate. Chris, as a neutral, like, how do we change this? Is there something that can be done here to give these promoted clubs a better chance? And it's almost trying to falsify something. I know you're more restricted, Matt, in terms of like PSR expenditure and stuff isn't helpful. Do you think that would be a fixed match just to jump in?
Um, I mean, it could help because we had to sell a load in the championship, the Lavia, Prousies, to make that money. And I think we're going to have to do again this summer, which, takes away from what you've kind of had those players with the Premier League experience.
Go on in, Chris. Go on.
Yeah, I, I don't know. There is a solution really because the bar, and everything is set against the teams coming up. Because obviously, all the teams up there every season they get more wealthy. You get good players going to kind of clubs that 10 years ago they wouldn't have even considered getting those sort of players. Um, you look at this season, you've got the likes of Forest, Bournemouth, Fulham, who have competed at the top half of the table. When the trouble is, I think when you've got 10 years ago, or even maybe even longer, when you had teams going up, you had maybe three or four other teams who you knew you were competing with. Where now you're lucky if you've got one or two. You don't really know. You might have in the end, you might have a team you're competing with. You might have a bad season, but you don't know who that's going to be to start off with. I can't see how it does change because every season the clubs in. I know Southampton and Leicester they went down after being in there, but unless that happens, where you get an established club dropping out, that pool of clubs that you're competing against gets smaller. So you're first of all competing against the other two clubs you've gone up with. If you're lucky, you've got one or two other clubs, and then you're relying on everyone else having a season that's bad for them.
Yeah, I mean,
You
if
don't
you
know who they're
said
going to
like
be.
now of the 17 teams that will remain, who's most likely to go down next year, there's nothing that stands out to you. You're almost thinking like, oh, if Silva left Fulham, if Glasner left Palace, if Frank left Brentford, these sort of things, if Areola left Bournemouth, would these sort of clubs suddenly be in trouble? And you think, actually, the continuation and the models have been working. Probably no. You look at Wolves with Pereira. Yes, we can joke about Tottenham and Man United, but probably does get better. Everton going into the new stadium look good with Moyes now. We're saying
Yeah.
you're basically in pre-season, Chris. You'll get better. Look at 17 teams. Who could go down next year?
That's what I mean. It's so you're kind of clutching at straws, aren't you? I mean, you're
It's not
looking at
even. I think we've had a situation for a while where it's felt like, uh, if a promoted team can hit towards 35, 36 points, then that might be enough. Because I think for a while that number's been coming down. But we're looking
yeah,
at a scenario here where there's every possibility is the team finishing 17th is going to have over 40 points. And that'd be the first time that's happened for quite a while, I think. And you look at them all and go, well, they'll do that again. So you need someone to come up and pretty much put sort of like 45 points on the board.
yeah. I
It's
mean, talking
just
about the
difficult to foresee it.
last time that happened, it's probably us, wasn't it? The highest points total. Then we
You
went
went
up
down with a
everything.
monster, mate, yeah, in
Yeah,
2003. Too good to go down. Which is a reminder that it can happen. But what was that,
yeah,
44 points you went down on? Or
something
was it
like
42?
that. 40, yeah, around the
I
42,
think you would have
44.
gone
I
down
can't
on
remember.
44 anyway, because Bolton
Yes,
finished on 44 from memory in that season. So, yes, whoever comes up, it's not even your aim, your target's different. I don't think you're going, oh,
it's
that magic 40. You're almost looking, have we got to be more?
yeah. I mean, it feels impossible to be honest with you.
It's beginning
It
to
just
feel that way, but it can't be. If a club the size of Leeds come up, it can't be impossible.
I mean, it's not technically it's not, but you're clutching at straws, aren't you? It's gonna be once every now and then a season it happens that they stay up. It's just so hard. It's just so hard for them. I
It's
mean,
also easy to forget that on obviously the last six promoted teams are going to go down, but the three that were promoted before that are all top half in the Premier League at the moment: Fulham, Bournemouth, Forest. So like, it can be done.
I
Brentford and
mean,
Brighton have given great examples of what can be achieved.
yeah. I mean, It's just a case of getting past that first season. I mean, what you said about sacking the manager, in some senses, it makes logical sense, but I realistically, no club's probably going to do that. But and the other trouble if you do that is this that then you disincentivize the person who's coming in unless they don't care and they're quite happy to take that club to promotion, and then know they're going to be stepping aside. But this is you then get a different experience of what players you get and all that kind of thing as well. So
If you look at Bournemouth and Fulham, who come up, they had Solanke and Mitrovic respectively,
yeah,
who knew could score goals at this level. And Forest had a more pragmatic manager, I think it's fair to say, in Cooper, who ultimately that's how he got them over the line. They got over the line and they've tried to change a bit since, and it's obviously got a lot better. But it feels like it's got to be one of those two. You've either got to have a manager that's prepared to be pragmatic, or you've got to have someone who score goals. I mean, you're forwards, Matt. Who's your top scorer? Is it on you actually in like three? Is it?
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. But I think you've hit the nail on the
That's
head there.
mental.
Because you look at Ipswich, they're, you know,
The
better
lap.
than what we are, but it's the lap. Whereas,
But
yeah,
also unproven at this level. So
yeah,
what I mean by that is they Solanke and Mitrovic, as I said yesterday, those two clubs got promoted with those players already in their team, fit to their style, etc. Delap's done great; he's in double figures for goals.
yeah,
But you're also changing and adapting towards him, and he's adapting to them. So you need to almost come up with like a proven good goal scoring striker, or a manager that's going to be prepared to be pragmatic and focus more on the results. And ironically, Leicester had that
yep,
and walked away from it. They were
yeah.
17th when they sacked Cooper.
They'd
So
be in a far better situation if they didn't.
I think that's absolutely fair to say. Am I right in saying, Matt, that it's Red Bull Leipzig are the most likely club to give you 100 million for Tyler Diblin?
Yeah, the Germany links have been, uh, yeah, thereabouts. Munich's been mentioned, which I'd be amazed at. But yeah, someone like Leipzig, it honestly wouldn't surprise me. But there's no way we get 100 million. If he goes over to Germany, I think we'd be lucky to get 70 million euros, let alone anywhere near that 100 million pound mark.
I don't know if any club here would pay 50, to be honest.
I don't think they will. This is where the club are going to have to make a decision because we don't want to lose Dribbling for any less than say 70 because you look at him, he's an English talent. He'll fit the quota for, most Premier League clubs. And we're not now in a position where we need to because I think we genuinely have assets such as Harwood Bellis, Ramsdale, Bednarak. Between four or five of them, we could probably get 60 to 70 million in the summer anyway, as a minimum. So we don't necessarily have to sell another player for that same value. It's just how much the club think. One, do we need Dibbling? Can we work without him in the championship? Or how much would that money then benefit to maybe bring in two, for instance, that two holding midfielders for, say, a Dibbling? That'll be a huge thing. And I think that's one of the reasons Johannes Spors has come in. He'll work with Phil Parsons to make those decisions.
Yes, there's a danger that you hold. I mean, it's not a danger, but there's a danger you hold and he doesn't progress as hoped. And then you get promoted and he's maybe not good enough for the level and no one else is buying him anymore. I mean, he wouldn't be the first 18-year-old kid to
No.
look incredible and then not develop in the way that we'd expect. And I'm sure he probably will. It does feel like probably it's a sizable. I mean, what would you rather? Would you rather keep him and lose all the other players you just mentioned, or keep them and just lose Diblin?
A bit of both. I mean, it'd be great. The talk is Dibbling and Fernandez. And for me personally, I'd rather keep Fernandez because he's that kind of midfield maestro. He's a creative player. Dibbling, ever since his injury, he's kind of shown that unless there's a particular style developed around him, he struggles to really dominate games. And yeah, he'll have the moments where he drives through a midfield and runs towards the defense, but nobody's really been talking about Dibbling for the last 3-4 months.
Mm.
And that's because he hasn't produced what he did before Christmas.
Yeah, it's interesting that. Do you expect them other names you'd mentioned to move on? I mean, I
Yeah,
did see quite laughably, and I
I
did
think
have to laugh, Aaron Ramsdale getting linked with Manchester United.
yeah
And
that
someone said he really is going for the record of relegations.
yeah that's not going to happen. Personally, I think Ramsdale and Harwood Bellis will end up at West Ham.
Oh, Chris, reaction.
Yeah, I've seen Ramsdale's name mentioned, and we are, it seems, looking for a goalkeeper. Um, I imagine that would be Fabianski dropping out. Would be the
Going
logical
down,
step.
going down, going. He does love a relegation, Chris. I'm just saying.
Well, well, based on this season, it'd be in the right place, wouldn't he? But in our league position, but yeah, I mean, it'd be a good addition, Ramsdale. Um, I wouldn't say he's a massive uplift on Areola. Both good, but both very good shot stoppers. Um, but he's quite vocal, so maybe we need that. But I don't know. He's been linked with a few other names, goalkeeper wise. So it's one of those where they're obviously agents and teams know we're interested. So there's obviously a lot of names flying around. So we'll have to wait and see. I mean, obviously, uh, uh, what's his name? I can't remember his name now. Howard Bellis. He would be decent as well.
Agreed.
So yeah, they're good players. There's whenever there's teams going down, there's a stigma sometimes with fans, but there's always good players within those clubs who have proved themselves or have proved themselves prior to being at the club at that level. So they wouldn't be bad additions. We definitely are going to have a few players leaving. Some of them. Trouble is, it's sometimes the players you don't want to leave that are the ones that go, and you're stuck with the ones you don't want, which we found this season with the likes of Ings, really. You know, Well,
Do you think any of the big players will go this summer, Chris? Your
um,
Kuduses, Pakatars,
I,
Bowens.
Paquetá's a funny one because we don't know what's happening with all of the betting stuff. The club are backing him, but again, how much it's who comes in for him, who's after him. Obviously, at the moment with all that hanging over, you just don't know. It's difficult to gauge with him whether he would want to go, and I think it depends. Whereas he had his heart set on City, but that he wouldn't be the first player. But if it was, someone else in the Premier League, not a City or one of the so-called big clubs, would he be? Does he just want to leave? I imagine he'd more likely go abroad if he went anywhere. But Kudos, I could see leaving if the offer came in. If we got 70, 80 million, I could see the club accepting that. Um, he's he's not been as good as his first season. Whether that's because he he wants to move on. I think he's a ambitious player, and I think he sees himself doing better than West Ham, which is fair enough. I don't think he's conducted himself poorly in that time, but I think if the right offer came in, I think the club would accept it. So Kudos is one of those that could well go out of the established players that are good enough to be there.
And Bowens presumably too scared of his father-in-law to leave, or
Probably, yeah. I think he probably knows a few gangsters, so he's probably
I think
threatened.
in fairness to Bowen, he'd said he really wants to stay at West Ham a number of times, hasn't he? So don't see
Yeah,
that actually.
I don't see. I mean, he feels like he's got roots there, as it were, that kind of thing. So I think I don't. It would be a major major shock if he went.
Yeah, agreed. Gentlemen, thank you both very much. Let's do correct score predictions before we finish. Chris,
I'll say 2-0 West Ham.
Matt.
2-1 West Ham.
I think you score as well, Matt. I'll go 3-1. I hope you beat Leicester. I got nothing against Leicester. But I think that's where the points probably are there for you, mate. I really hope you win that football match because I'm not just saying it because Uriel said it on other shows. You are not as bad as that Derby team.
Yeah.
That Derby team was getting whacked absolutely everywhere. And actually, away from home, you haven't much. When you look at your away results, particularly,
Yep.
it's really interesting. Winning at Arsenal, winning at Manchester United, was it like 1-0 at Villa?
We've conceded the most goals from winning positions
It's
this
probably
league.
only Chelsea really going to give you a slapping on the road, isn't it?
Yeah.
The 4-0 when Kyle Palmer didn't do much for those who captained him that week. Thank you, gents. Chris, anything you want to plug before we
Uh,
finish, mate?
no, all good, mate.
And yourself, Matt?
Nah, just get yourself involved in Patreon.
Thank you very much, mate. No content for you tomorrow, guys. Sorry, I'm in Germany. There will be a deadline stream on Saturday, 12:30 p.m. UK time, and I presume the boss man Suj will be back with me for the game review podcast. Be next Tuesday because it's a bank holiday here in the UK. I can tell you next week's clash of the correspondents does involve the team that Matt hopefully beats in game week 35. It's Wolves versus Leicester City ahead of game week 34 with Bradley Parker and Sam Martin. Just see to say thanks very much to Chris and to Matt. Good luck, gents. Cue music, please, man child.